The moment the stone left the pedestal, the serpent illusion vanished. The psychic pressure lifted. The cavern returned to its deadly silence. Amara exhaled in relief. She had the first component. She turned, preparing for the journey back. But as her flashlight swept across the tunnel she'd come through, her heart stopped. A steady stream of small bubbles was rising from it. It wasn't an illusion. It wasn't a fish. Someone else was in the water with her. The cult had arrived. In a frozen moment of horror, Amara stared at the stream of bubbles rising from the narrow passage. The triumph of finding the meteor's heart vanished instantly. Replaced by a cold reality, she was cornered, dozens of meters underground, with the only exit blocked from the darkness of the tunnel. Two shapes emerged. They weren't monsters or illusions. They were the terror of the real world. Two divers, in tactical black gear, moved with the lethal efficiency of professionals. Their flashlights swept over, locking onto Amara. In their hands were not research tools, but spear guns and razor-sharp daggers. One, clearly the leader, raised a gloved hand. He didn't need to speak. His hand signals were clear. Drop the bag. Stay still. Amara knew surrender meant failure. The urn, the ritual, everything would end here. She had one option. Without hesitation, she turned and swam frantically toward the main cavern's exit, toward the faint light from above. A spear tore through the water, grazing her ear and embedding into a nearby stalactite with a sharp clack. The hunt was on. The vast cavern, once a sanctuary of silence, became a battlefield. Amara used the limestone columns as cover, weaving through them to break her pursuer's line of sight. Her breathing grew heavy and panic through her regulator. She could feel the whisperer's uneasy stirrings in the urn, as if it too sensed the external threat. She knew she couldn't outswim them forever. They were soldiers, trained for environments like this. She had to use her mind, not her strength. A crazy idea sparked, based on her father's geological notes about the limestone structural instability here. A suicidal plan, but her only. Once she abruptly changed direction, no longer swimming upward, but doubling back, straight toward her pursuers. The unexpected move threw them off for a moment. She glided past, her eyes meeting the leaders through their masks. In his gaze, she saw cold surprise. She kept swimming, heading back to the narrow tunnel they'd just emerged from. She's doubling back. Amara heard a muffled voice. Through an underwater cut her off. The divers turned and chased her into the tunnel. They'd taken the bait as they entered the tightest section. Amara, now on the other side in the secondary cavern, acted. She didn't attack them. She attacked the cavern itself. She found it, just as her father had noted. A massive stalactite hung from the ceiling above the tunnel, its base bearing a large crack, a critical structural weakness. She drew her dive knife. It wasn't a weapon against people, but a lever. She jammed the blade into the crack and pried. With all her strength, the rock groaned, a deep, resonant sound vibrating through the water. The agents realized her intent. They frantically turned, trying to swim out of the tunnel. But it was too late. With a final roar of desperation, Amara threw her full weight into the knife. The massive stalactite broke free from the ceiling. It didn't just fall. It triggered a chain reaction. The entire tunnel ceiling collapsed in a cloud of mud, rock, and water. The shockwave from the collapse hurled Amara backward. She tumbled in the murky water, completely disoriented. But she was alive. The passage was sealed forever. The two hunters were buried with the secrets of Cenote Shibalbashi, slowly regained control, and began the long ascent to the surface. When She broke the surface, gasping in the jungle air. She saw Matteo peering down from the Senna's edge, but his face held no relief. Only fear, and beside him stood another man, dressed in a crisp shirt, holding a satellite phone. He looked down at Amara with a cold smile. "I'm sorry, girl," Matteo's voice echoed, thick with desperation and regret. They found my family." Amara froze. She had escaped the trap below ground, only to fall into a larger one waiting. Above treading water, her breaths rippling the Senna's still surface, Amara felt helplessness engulf her. The only exit was blocked. She had fought monsters, faced entities, but now she was defeated by something far more mundane and cruel. Human betrayal. The stranger stood at the pit's edge, his gun not aimed at her, but at Matteo's temple. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of control. He was tall, neatly dressed in beige expedition gear, looking more like a wealthy patron than a soldier. But his eyes were cold and emotionless. "Dr. Amara Khalil," he said, his voice calm and eerily polite. "We admire your tenacity, truly, but the game ends here. Who are you?" Amara asked, stalling, her mind racing for an escape. "We are believers in a better future," the man replied. "Our organization can offer you resources your father could only dream of. Think about it, Amara. Instead of a lone jailer, you could be a priestess, guiding humanity to a new dawn. Join us. Hand over the vessel in the meteor's heart." As he spoke, Amara felt a stir from the backpack. Her fear and desperation were resonating with the whisperer. A cold, invisible wave of psychic energy radiated from the urn. The stranger shuddered slightly, his eyes darting around the jungle with alertness. "Something's wrong with this place," he muttered. Matteo, held captive, began trembling violently, his eyes wide with panic. Amara realized something. Her emotions could trigger a leak, and maybe she could use that, but she also knew a direct confrontation was futile. They had the advantage of position, numbers, and a hostage. She had one way out, an insane gamble based on her father's geological notes about the underground river system connecting the region. Sinotesh slowly raised her hands, a gesture of surrender. "Fine," she said, her voice weary and defeated. "You win." She made a show of struggling to remove the heavy backpack. The stranger smiled, a victor's smile. He motioned for her to push the backpack toward the wall so he could retrieve it. "A wise decision, Doctor." As he stepped forward, slightly lowering his guard, Amara acted. She didn't push the backpack. She clutched it tightly and let out a final defiant scream. "See you in hell." Then, she took a deep breath, filling her lungs, and let herself sink. She didn't swim up but dove deeper into the black abyss. No. The man roared in fury. He fired several shots into the water, the bullets ripping through the stillness and creating small geysers before vanishing uselessly into the dark. Amara was gone. The journey that followed was a nightmare of survival. She swam in absolute darkness, guided only by her compass and memory of her father's map. The air in her tank dwindled. The underground current sometimes propelled her, sometimes tried to pull her into rocky crevices. She fought exhaustion, cold, and the despair threatening to drown her after what felt like an eternity. When she thought she'd die down there, she saw a faint glimmer of light above with her last strength. She swam toward it. She broke the surface, coughing violently, in a different small cave, miles from Sinodi Shabalba. She had made it. She had survived. She crawled onto the shore, collapsing, too exhausted to move. She had lost most of her equipment, But the backpack and its two priceless artifacts remained intact, lying there, staring at a patch of blue sky through the cave's opening. She knew Mexico was no longer safe. The cult was everywhere, with near limitless resources. She needed to go somewhere entirely different, so remote and isolated that even they would struggle to reach her. Trembling, she opened her father's waterlogged journal, flipping to the page with the world map. Her bruised, freezing fingers traced across the Pacific. Through Asia they stopped at the roof of the world, the Himalayas. The path ahead was no longer a descent into the abyss. Now she had to climb the shift from the humid heat of the Yucatan jungle to the dry, cold, and thin air of the Himalayas was a shock to both body and mind. Amara arrived in Kathmandu, a city of prayer flags, incense, and ancient temples. She didn't stay long. She used most of her remaining money to hire a Sherpa guide to take her into the high mountains to the remote region housing Gompa Lungam, the monastery of the Wind Walkers. The multi-day trek was a test of endurance. Each step was an effort, the thin air burning her lungs. The backpack with its two powerful artifacts seemed exponentially heavier. But the surrounding landscape was so majestic it almost made her forget her fatigue. Snow-capped peaks pierced the azure sky, deep valleys stretched below, and fierce winds carried the purity of the world's roof. The whisperer in the urn grew strangely silent here. The spiritual energy of this land, steeped in millennia of stillness and faith, seemed to unsettle its chaotic nature. Her guide pointed to a small structure blending into a sheer cliff in the distance. "That's Gompa Lungam," he said. "They don't welcome outsiders. I can only take you this far." Amara made the final leg alone. The monastery was carved into the cliff, its faded prayer flags fluttering in the wind. It felt more like a fortress of silence than a place of worship. An elderly monk greeted her. She couldn't lie in a place like this. She explained she was a scholar seeking a rare plant, Kalish Shanti, the piece of Kalish, known in legend as the silent flower, to complete research that could save lives. The abbot, a man with eyes as deep as the night sky, gazed at her for a long moment. "I sense a great storm in your soul, traveler," he said slowly. "That flower is not for those with restless hearts. It grows in the hall of echoed silence, a place of absolute stillness. To enter, your mind must be as calm as a lake without ripples. A single thought of fear, anger, or ambition will awaken the hall's guardians." It was a challenge. Amara was led to a round wooden door. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The hall was a circular chamber carved entirely from the mountain's heart. There were no decorations, and it was silent. An absolute, heavy silence that let her hear the blood pulsing in her ears. At the center, rising from a tray of white sand, was a single flower. Its crystal petals seemed to absorb all sound, radiating a gentle silver light. Amara closed her eyes, trying to empty her mind. But the moment she did, the whisperer attack suppressed. By the purity of this place, it now thrashed desperately. The psychic screams, once silent, erupted in her mind, louder than Beneath the Pyramid. It projected horrifying images: Silas laughing, Callan disintegrating, Luxor burning. It wanted her to fear, to rage, and the hall reacted. From the room's dark corners, shadows began to move. They had no clear form, just entities of darkness drawn to Amara's psychic noise. They slithered toward her. Amara realized she couldn't suppress the whisperer by force. The more she fought, the more noise she created. She had to follow the monk's way, not to fight, but to accept and let it pass. She stopped resisting. She let the visions and screams flow through her mind like clouds across the sky. She didn't judge or react. She focused only on one thing, her breath. Inhale, exhale her mind. Once a raging storm became a still lake, the whisperer's screams grew faint, distant. The shadowy guardians in the corners slowly retreated, dissolving into the darkness. In that absolute silence, Amara opened her eyes. She calmly walked to the center of the room. She reached out and gently plucked the flower of silence. It was cool in her hand, seeming to hum with a melody of quiet. As she stepped out of the hall, the abbot was waiting. He said nothing, only bowed to her with deep respect. She had passed the test. Amara nodded in return. She had the second component. 2/3 of the journey was done. Only one place remained, the ancient land of dreams. As Amara left the hall, echoed silence. She felt an extraordinary calm and clarity. The battle with the Whisperer had forged her will into a sharp weapon. In her hand was the flower of silence, its crystal petals absorbing chaotic sounds, leaving only pure peace. The abbot stood waiting outside, giving her a silent nod of acknowledgement. Amara bowed in gratitude. She turned to leave the monastery's main hall and begin her descent down the mountain, but a voice stopped her. Calm, polite, and utterly out of place. An impressive display of will, Dr. Khalil. Amara spun around. Valeri stepped from the shadows of a corridor. He wore no soldiers' gear, but a sleek, expensive gray mountaineering outfit. 2 agents in similar attire followed, keeping a respectful distance. Valeris's face held no hostility, only the curiosity of a scientist observing a fascinating phenomena. Instantly, the abbot and several monks stepped forward, silently forming a barrier between Amara and the intruders. No need for concern. Honored ones, Valeris said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We come in peace. I only wish to speak with the doctor. He looked directly at Amara. I am Valerius. I believe, at our core, we share the same goal. Our methods merely differ. Your goal is to unleash a monster, Amara said, her voice cold, her grip tightening on the flower of silence. Wrong, Valerius shook his head. Our goal is to save humanity from itself. You've traveled the world, Doctor. What have you seen? War, disease, chaos, endless greed. Humanity is a virus destroying this planet. The progenitor you keep trapped in that vessel offers a cure. A perfect order. A unified consciousness. He held up a slim tablet displaying charts and data on wars, famines, and environmental disasters. This is the world you're trying to protect. A dying patient. And you're attempting to destroy the only medicine that can save it. That's not order. That's annihilation, Amara countered, her voice steady and certain after the hall's trial. It's the silence of a grave. You claim to save humanity, but you'd strip away its essence, free will, the right to err, to love, and to suffer. Valerius chuckled, a low, condescending sound. Freedom is a beautiful illusion, Doctor, but it's also the root of all chaos. He glanced at the flower in her hand. You're clever. You found the second component. Did you know we've been tracking you since Rome? We knew you'd come. Here, we let you take it. Why? Amara frowned. Because you're doing our work for us, Valerius said, delivering a vicious psychological blow. The components of the ritual of destruction are also the keys to safely controlling and amplifying the progenitor's power. You're assembling our machine, Doctor. On behalf of the organization, I thank you. He took a step closer. Come with us peacefully, Amara. Hand over the components. You'll be treated as a priestess, helping us usher in the new dawn." The monks tightened their protective circle. Amara met Valerius's gaze. "I'd rather die." The patience on Valerius's face vanished. "Pity," he signaled his agents, but before they could act, the monks began to chant. Not shouting, but a low, steady, powerful sound, like a mountain's heartbeat. The vibrations of their chant created a physical ripple in the air, a wall of spiritual energy that forced the agents back. Clutching their heads in the chaos, Amara moved. She didn't run for the main door. She darted toward a small balcony at the hall's edge. Used by monks for cliffside meditation, she leapt over the railing, grabbing a precarious ledge. It was a path not meant for ordinary people. Valerius watched, a flicker of anger crossing his face before he smiled again. "Clever," he muttered, "but you can't run forever, Doctor. Australia is vast, and the desert offers no hiding place." He knew where she was going next. Amara didn't hear him. She clung to the cliff, beginning the most perilous escape of her life down the mountain. She had two components, but her enemy was now one step ahead. She looked to the distant horizon. Australia, the land of dreams and her final battlefield, awaited her. Escape from the roof of the world tested her improvisation and courage. In Kathmandu, she sold a small piece of the lapis lazuli on the black market, enough for cash and new forged papers. Every transaction was a gamble. Every stranger's face could belong to an agent of the believers. The flight to Darwin, Australia, was long and tense. She didn't dare sleep, her mind on constant alert. The backpack holding the ritual's two components was clutched like a child. The whisperer in its vessel seemed to sense the new environment, growing quiet, retreating before this alien continent from Darwin. She bought an old 4x4, stocked it with water and supplies, and began her journey into the outback. The world around her transformed dramatically. Noisy cities and snow-capped mountains faded, replaced by endless red earth, sparse scrub, and a sky so blue it felt unreal. The heat was dry and fierce. The silence here was powerful, vast and ancient, making Amara feel like a speck in times. This external silence brought strange peace to her mind. The whisperer seemed subdued by the land's primal energy. It no longer attacked her. It watched with a strange alien awe. Amara used this precious time to study her father's final notes. He hadn't just marked a location. He'd corresponded with a late anthropologist who'd spent a lifetime studying the Yurlunga tribe, a fictional name, believed to be descendants of the first people, still holding secrets of the Dreamtime. Her father noted an elder, Kulu, and a sacred site, a massive sandstone spiral deep in Arnhem land. After days of grueling driving, she reached the area. She knew she couldn't drive to a sacred site. That would be an insult. Drawing on her archaeologist's experience, she did the right thing. She parked at a safe distance, took only essentials, and walked. She didn't hide. She let the land see her, signaling respect to its guardians. After a day walking under scorching sun, they found her. Two Aboriginal men appeared from thin air, silent as ghosts. They carried no modern weapons, only wooden spears. Their eyes were sharp, watching her every move. Amara said nothing. She slowly set down her backpack and sat on the ground, a gesture of non-hostility. She offered a water bottle as a gift. They exchanged a glance, one step forward and took it. They remained silent, but the tension eased. They motioned for her to follow. They led her for hours to a small settlement hidden among rocks. Not a village, but a few simple camps, a community. In harmony with nature, she was brought before the eldest man. His skin was wrinkled like tree bark, his hair white, and his eyes held the wisdom of thousands of generations. This was Kulu. Amara didn't speak of the believers or monsters. She used the language of myth when she believed he'd understand, elder. She said respectfully, "I'm on a journey to heal a great sickness, an ancient curse haunting my world. It came from the stars and is trapped in stone." She showed the silver scar on her hand, then a page from her father's journal with a spiral symbol. Kulu studied the scar, then the drawing. His eyes narrowed. He recognized it, the symbol of Yurlungur, the rainbow serpent, a creator and potential destroyer in the dreamtime. He looked into Amara's eyes as if seeing her entire journey, her pain and her resolve. He was silent for so long Amara thought she'd failed. Then he nodded slowly. "I see the shadow in your soul, child of a distant land," he said, his voice low like wind through stone. "And I see your fire." He agreed to help. But he explained, "The dust of the dream rock cannot be taken. It must be given. And to receive from the dreamtime, you must first walk within it." That night, as the outback sky exploded with billions of stars Amara had never seen, she sat by a fire with the Yurlungur tribe. Kulu handed her a cup of water mixed with strange herbs. "Drink," he said, "and remember, do not lose yourself. Many enter the dreamtime, but only their spirits return." Amara looked at the cup, then up at the starry sky. She had found her final guide, but her last challenge wouldn't be a battle with monsters or men. It would be a journey into her own consciousness and that of an ancient continent. She drank deeply. The dreamtime awaited. The liquid Kulu gave Amara tasted of earth, roots, and a faint sweetness like honey. As she drank it, she felt no dizziness or drowsiness. Instead, her senses sharpened unnaturally. The crackle of the campfire sounded like small thunderclaps. Kulu's low, steady chanting became a deep, resonant vibration, like the hum of a giant didgeridoo. The night sky above was no longer a flat plain, but a vast dome, with stars dripping silver light onto the desert. The world around her began to melt. Her body felt weightless, then heavy, then as if it ceased to exist. She was drifting when she opened her eyes. She was no longer by the fire. She stood on a blazing red landscape beneath a sky woven from swirling bands of gold, white and black, like a massive oil painting. There was no sun, yet the space glowed with an inner light. Around her were strange trees, their twisted trunks like dancing bodies, their leaves singing soft melodic notes in the sky. Weaving through the colored bands was the colossal rainbow serpent, Yurlungur. It wasn't a creature of flesh but a river of light and color, moving with graceful silence. A primordial god observing its own world. This was the dream to me. A figure appeared before Amara. An aboriginal man. His body seemed made of smoke and starlight, perhaps. An ancestral spirit. "You carry a shadow that does not belong here." Its voice echoed, not as sound but as thought. "It taints the dreamtime. The dream rock is the heart of this land. It will not grant its gift to one who bears corruption." "What must I do?" Amara asked with her mind. "Face your shadow. Banish it from this sacred place. Prove your spirit is stronger." As the spirit spoke, another form took shape before Amara. It was born from her fears and guilt, a twisted version of herself, the hallucination from Luxor. But this time, it was more real. Its eyes were empty black voids, and the Kaida rune on its hand burned with sickly green fire. "You cannot escape me." The shadow Amara hissed, its voice a blend of her own and the whisperer's rasping murmur. "You are weak. You are a failure. You left your friends to die. It projected her most painful memories into her mind. Callum disintegrating, Elena screaming, Silas sneering. Amara felt her resolve waver. Guilt surged, but then she recalled the trial in the silent hall. She couldn't fight it with anger or fear. That's what it wanted. She took a deep breath in this airless world and looked into her shadow's empty eyes. Yes, she said, her psychic voice steady. I failed. I couldn't save them. That pain will stay with me forever. The shadow seemed startled by her admission. But I am not that pain, Amara continued. I am not my failures. I am the one who survived. I am the one who fought. And I won't let you use their memories to defile them further. She reached out, not to strike, but in a gesture of acceptance and release. You are part of my past, but you are not my future. This place is not for you. Her acceptance and willpower formed the pulse of pure energy. The shadow Amara let out a horrific scream as it was repelled. It couldn't exist in a mind no longer ruled by fear and guilt. It shrank, distorted, and dissolved into the air as the shadow vanished. The dreamtime seemed to sigh in relief. The rainbow serpent Yurlunger in the sky appeared to nod at her. The ancestral spirit reappeared. Without a word, it gestured toward a massive sandstone spiral in the distance. The dream rocked. The rock began to glow brilliantly. A tiny pinch of dust, sparkling like starlight, broke free, floating through the air and settling into Amara's open palm. It was weightless, yet she felt the energy of thousands of dreams and memories within it. She had the final component. Your journey nears its end, the spirit said. But remember, that shadow is not destroyed. It still waits in the waking world. Use what you have gained wisely. The world around Amara began to fade. She jolted awake, gasping. She was back by the dying fire. Dawn was breaking on the horizon. Kulu sat across from her, his eyes kind. Amara slowly opened her hand. And it was a pinch of faintly glowing dust. It was real. Now you are ready, Kulu said. Amara looked at the stardust in her hand, then at the rising sun. She had her weapons. She had faced demons within and without. Only one battle remained. Journey from Australia's dreamlands to Chile's Atacama Desert was her final crossing. Amara flew across the Pacific, an ocean separating her from her past. She was no longer the hunted. She was heading toward her destined confrontation. She chose the Atacama, one of Earth's driest places with the clearest night skies, for a reason. Her father's notes indicated that to destroy a cosmic entity, the ritual must occur where the veil between Earth and the stars is thinnest. She drove hours from the nearest town into Valle de la Luna, the Valley of the Moon. The landscape was surreal and desolate. Barren mountains, white sand dunes, and wind-carved rocks under a cloudless blue sky. It felt more like an alien planet than Earth, the end of the world. A perfect stage for the final act. Amara found the site her father marked, a flat salt basin ringed by red stone hills, like a natural amphitheater carved by time. She knew the believers were coming. They'd likely tracked her from the airport. Time was short. She waited until sunset. As night fell, a breathtaking spectacle unfolded. With no city lights or pollution, the Atacama sky was a black velvet tapestry studded with billions of blazing stars. The Milky Way stretched above like a diamond river. This was the world the Whisperer once belonged to. Under the starlight, Amara began her final preparations. She spread a clean cloth on the white salt ground and carefully placed her three components on it. The meteor heart, obsidian black and heavy, seemed to drink the starlight. The crystal flower of silence shimmered with pure calm. The small leather pouch of dream dust glowed with a warm, faint light. The whisperer in its basalt vessel trembled violently. It no longer screamed, only emitted a frequency of pure fear. It knew what these were. It knew what was coming. Amara followed her father's final instructions. The ritual wasn't chemical, but a fusion of opposing energies. She placed the obsidian stone in the center. With her hands, she gently crushed the flower of silence's crystal petals. Instead of shattering, they melted into a silver liquid, shimmering like mercury. She used it to trace Kaida sealing runes onto the stone. Finally, she opened the pouch and sprinkled the dream dust over it. A silent reaction occurred. No blinding light, no explosion. Instead, the three components melded. Dust, liquid, and stone fused into a single object. A small, jet-black sphere, not a material black, but the black of absolute void. A tiny rift in reality that seemed to absorb the surrounding starlight. Within it, a faint silver pulse flickered. Weakly, the catalyst of destruction was complete. Amara felt a cold peace. Everything was ready. She sat cross-legged, placing the black sphere before her, the basalt vessel beside it. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath, preparing for the final battle. Then she heard a distant engine's roar shattered the desert silence. She opened her eyes. On the horizon, a line of headlights approached, trails of dust glowing in the moonlight. They had come. Amara didn't panic. She didn't flee. There was nowhere left to run. She stood slowly, a lone figure under the starry sky. She stood between the prison and the weapon to destroy it, awaiting those who sought to free the monster. The final battle at the world's end was about to begin. 5 4x4s roared across the flat salt plain, forming a perfect circle around Amara. Their blinding headlights snapped on in unison, casting her as a lone actor on a stark white stage, trapped in a prison of light. The engines cut off. The Atacama's silence returned. Heavy and menacing doors opened. Over a dozen agents in black tactical gear stepped out, moving with silent precision, swiftly taking positions around her. Weapons ready. From the lead vehicle, Valerius emerged. Still in his pristine, high-tech expedition outfit, he was a stark contrast to the dusty, tense scene. He strolled toward Amara, stopping about 10 meters away. A dramatic setting for the final act, don't you think, Doctor? Valerius said, his voice eerily calm. The stars above, a god waiting below. Quite poetic. Your god is a plague, Amara replied, her voice equally steady. Her hand resting lightly on her backpack. Valerius sighed theatrically. Stubborn to the end. A pity. I truly hoped you'd see the bigger picture. No need for bloodshed. Here, Amara, hand over the artifacts. You've played your role brilliantly. History will remember you as the one who paved the way for the new dawn, for a unified humanity. History will remember you as fanatics who tried to unleash destruction. Amara said, her eyes locked on Valerius, though her mind sensed the agents. Positions through the pulsing scar on her hand. Valerius gave a sad smile. I gave you a chance. He raised his hand, a nearly imperceptible signal. Instantly, guns fired, but they didn't aim at her. Bullets struck the salt ground around her feet, kicking up white shards. A show of force, a psychological threat to make. Her cower. Amara reacted on instinct. She dove behind a nearby oddly shaped sandstone boulder, the only cover. Bullets chipped the rock, sparking and clanging. She was pinned, unarmed. Completely outmatched. Her scar burned, signaling the agents, tightening their circle from both sides. She sensed their intent. They didn't want to kill her. They wanted her alive, to seize the artifacts in that pinned down moment. Amid gunfire and salt dust, a cold truth crystallized in Amara's mind. She couldn't win this fight. She couldn't escape, but she wouldn't let them have what they wanted if. This was the end. She would decide how it ended. She glanced at her backpack. Inside were the black sphere of destruction and the basalt vessel of imprisonment. She wouldn't let Valerius use Thema reckless plan, a final gamble formed in her mind. She wouldn't perform the ritual calmly. She'd do it here in this battlefield, making the chaos itself part of the rite. Stop, Valerius shouted, sensing the shift in her resolve through her defiant gaze. He signaled his men to advance, to take her as the first two agents charged toward the boulder. Amara acted. She didn't draw a weapon. She yanked the backpack open and with ruthless resolve, pulled out the canopic vessel. Valerius and his agents froze. For the first time, Valerius's confident mask cracked into panic. "No, don't," he screamed. He wanted to control the god, not unleash it in this chaotic way. Amara locked eyes with him, a bitter smile on her lips. "You want your new dawn?" she said. "Here it is." She whispered a final apology to the world. Then, with all her strength, she smashed the ancient BL vessel against the boulder's sharp edge. The crack of the vessel breaking was louder than the gunfire. It was the sound of a 38,000-year-old prison shattering instantly. A frigid, inky black mist erupted from the crack. With it came a psychic scream unlike anything Amara had ever felt. It was no longer a whisper or a roar. It was an absolute presence. A shockwave of pure consciousness that slammed into everyone in the desert like an invisible wall. The believers, agents trained and heavily armed, collapsed like marionettes with cut strings. They clutched their heads, convulsing, blood streaming from their eyes, noses, and ears. Valerius was no exception. He fell to his knees, his once calm face twisted in a mix of excruciating pain and sick ecstasy. He was beholding his god, and it was tearing his mind apart. Amara was in agony too. But her scar, and the will forged through countless trials, gave her a fragile sliver of resistance. She knew she had seconds before the entity fully reformed, found a new host, or became an unstoppable psychic storm sweeping the planet. She staggered to her feet, ignoring the chaos. She had to finish this. The black mist began to coalesce, forming an unstable silhouette, a pulsing dark heart in midair. It recognized its greatest foe, the one who destroyed its prison. It surged toward Amara, but Amara didn't retreat. She screamed, a human flesh and blood cry, defying the god's roar. "I'm the keeper. Face me." She raised her bleeding arm, an invitation, an acceptance of fate. The entity, in its rage, did exactly what she wanted. It didn't seek a weaker host. It dove straight into her, the source of the blood that had both imprisoned and freed it. The sensation was beyond words. 38,000 years of solitude, rage, madness, and hunger flooded her mind in an instant. She saw galaxies burn, worlds assimilated, the pain of an immortal being trapped in stone. She and the monster became one, but that was what she needed. With one final act of will, one last act as Amara Khalil, human, she seized the black sphere of destruction she had created. She pressed it to her chest, over her heart, and she spoke, not with her voice, but with her soul, a final command to the universe. No roar, no silence, only void. There was no physical explosion, only light. A pure, silent white light erupted from Amara's body. It wasn't hot or cold. It was the light of annihilation of erasure. It spread, a deadly calm wave, sweeping across the desert as it passed. Everything tied to the entity was erased. The black mist dissolved. The psychic screen fell silent. The agents lay still, their minds wiped clean. Valerius collapsed, a satisfied smile frozen on his face, finally achieving the unity he sought. The shattered basalt vessel crumbled too. Dust then, the white light receded and vanished. The Atacama returned to its natural silence, with only the faint whisper of wind at the center of it all. Amara lay. She slowly sat up, unharmed, breathing. Alive, she looked at her hand. The black Kaida scar was gone. The burn from the flower of silence was gone. Only a faint white scar remained. An ordinary mark. She looked up at the starry sky. Its beauty no longer overwhelmed or diminished her. It simply was. She thought of her parents, of Elena, Callum, Omar. She remembered them, but the grief was gone. The whisperer was gone. The entity was destroyed forever. The ritual had succeeded. It annihilated the monster by using Amara as a conduit, burning away the part of her soul. The entity had latched onto the part holding her strongest emotions: fear, anger, love, and pain. She stood, brushing salt dust from her clothes. She looked across the desolate desert, then up at the infinite sky. She was finally free, finally at peace, and finally, utterly alone. The roaring heart was silent. Only a forever still heart remained. The keeper's journey was over.
In the shadow of my archive, a new horror stirs. Date to listen.